Hello, my lovelies. Today we'll be reading the Grimm's Tale version of Hansel and Gretel. I highly suggest you get something to drink and maybe a blanket and just sit back, relax, and listen to the story. Hansel and Gretel. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. Next to a forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and 2 children. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. He had but little to eat, and once, when a great famine came to the land, he could no longer provide even their daily bread. One evening, as he was lying in bed worrying about his problems, he sighed and said to his wife, "What is to become of us? How can we feed our children when we have nothing to eat for ourselves?" "Man, do you know what?" answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning, we will take the 2 children out to the thickest part of the woods and make a fire for them, and give each of them a little piece of bread. Then leave them by themselves and go off to our work. They will not find their way back home, and we will be rid of them." "No, woman," said the man. "That was a little harsh, but I agree. I will not do that. How could I bring myself to abandon my own children alone in the woods? Wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces." "Oh, you fool," she said. "Then all 4 of us will starve. All you can do is to plane the boards for our coffins." And she gave him no peace until he agreed. "But I do feel sorry for the poor children," said the man. The 2 children had not been able to fall asleep because of their hunger, and they had heard what the stepmother had said to the father. Gretel cried bitter tears and said to Hansel, "It's over with us." "Be quiet, Gretel," said Hansel, "and don't worry, I know what to do." As soon as the adults had fallen asleep, he got up, pulled on his jacket, opened the lower door, and crept outside. The moon was shining brightly, and the white pebbles in front of the house were glistening like silver coins. Hansel bent over and filled his pockets with them, as many as would fit. Then he went back into the house and said, "Don't worry, Gretel. Sleep well. God will not forsake us." Then he went back to bed. Oh God, not the religious crap. I'm not really religious, but it's okay if you are. At daybreak, even before sunshine, the woman came and woke the 2 children. "Get up, you lazy bones. We're going to the woods to fetch wood." Then she gave each one a little piece of bread, saying, Here's something for midday. Don't eat it any sooner. You'll not get any more. Oh my god, why did my brain not want to work? Gretel put the bread up her apron because Hansel's pockets were full of stones. Then, all together, they set forth into the woods. After they had walked a little way, Hansel began stopping again and again and looking backward toward the house. The father said, "Hansel, why are you stopping and looking back? Pay attention now. Don't forget your legs." "Oh, father," Hansel said, "I am looking at my white cat that is sitting on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me." The woman said, "You fool, that isn't your cat. That's the morning sun on the chimney." However, Hansel had not been looking at his cat, but instead had been dropping shiny pebbles from his pockets onto the path. When they arrived in the middle of the woods, the father said, "You children gather some wood, and I will make a fire so you don't freeze." Hansel and Gretel gathered some twigs, a pile as high as a small mountain. The twigs were set afire, and when the flames were burning well, the woman said, "Lie down by the fire and rest. We will go into the woods and cut wood. When we are finished, we will come back and get you." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire. When midday came, each one ate his little piece of bread. Because they could hear the blow of an axe, they thought that the father was nearby. However, it was not an axe. It was a branch he had tied to a dead tree that the wind was beating back and forth. After they had sat there a long time, their eyes grew weary and closed, and they fell sound asleep. When they awoke, it was dark night, and Gretel began to cry and said, "How will we get out of the woods?" Hansel comforted her. "Wait a little until the moon comes up, and then we will find the way." After a full moon had come up, Hansel took his little sister by the hand, and they followed the pebbles that glistened like they were newly minted coins, showing them the way. They walked through the entire night, and as morning was breaking, they arrived at Father's house. They knocked on the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You wicked children, why did you sleep so long in the woods? We thought that you did not want to come back." But the father was overjoyed when he saw his children once more, for he had not wanted to leave them alone. Not long after, there was once again a great need everywhere. And one evening, the children heard the mother say to the father, "We have again eaten up everything. We only have half a loaf of bread, and then the song will be over. We must get rid of the children. We will take them deeper into the woods so they will not find their way out. Otherwise, there will be no help for us." The man was very disheartened, and he thought it would be better to share the last bit with the children. But the woman would not listen to him, scolded him, and criticized him. "He who says a must also say be." What? I don't know. And because he had given in the first time, he had to do it the second time as well. Dude, it's your life. You really don't. But okay. The children were still awake and had overheard the conversation. When the adults were asleep, Hansel got up again and wanted to gather pebbles, as he had done before. But the woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. But he comforted his little sister and said, "Don't cry, Gretel. Sleep well." Early the next morning, the woman came and got the children from their beds. They received their little pieces of bread, even less than the last time. On the way to the woods, Hansel crumbled his piece in his hand. In his pocket. Sorry, my brain. Then often stood still and threw crumbs onto the ground. "Hansel, why are you always stopping and looking around?" said his father. "Keep walking straight ahead." "I can see my pigeon sitting on the roof. It wants to say goodbye to me." "Fool," said the woman. "That isn't your pigeon. That's the morning sun shining on the chimney." But little by little, Hansel crumbled and dropped all the crumbs onto the path. The woman took them deeper into the woods than they had ever been in their whole lifetime. Once again, a large fire was made, and the mother said, "Sit here, children. If you get tired, you can sleep a little. We are going into the woods to cut wood. We will come and get you in the evening when we are finished." When it was midday, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel, who had scattered his piece along the path. Then they fell asleep, and the evening passed, but no one came to get the poor children. It was dark at night when they awoke. Hansel comforted Gretel and said, "Wait, when the moon comes up, I will be able to see the crumbs of bread that I scattered, and they will show us the way back home." When the moon appeared, they got up, but they could not find any crumbs, for the many thousands of birds that fly about in the woods and in the fields had picked them up. Hansel said to Gretel, "We will find our way," but they did not find it. They walked through the entire night and the next day, from morning until evening, but they did not find their way out of the woods. They were terribly hungry, for they had only eaten a few small berries that were growing on the ground. And because they were so tired, their legs would no longer carry them. They lay down under a tree and fell asleep. It was already the third morning since they had left the father's house, and they started walking again, but they managed only to go deeper and deeper into the woods. If help did not come soon, they would perish. At midday, they saw a little snow-white bird sitting on a branch. It sings so beautifully that they stopped to listen. When it was finished, it stretched its wings and flew in front of them. They followed it until they came to a little house, and the bird sat on the roof. When they came closer, they saw that the little house was built entirely from bread, with a roof made of cake, and windows were made of clear sugar. "Let's help ourselves to a good meal," said Hansel. "I'll eat a piece of the roof, and Gretel, you eat from the window. That will be sweet." Hansel reached up and broke off a little piece of the roof to see how it tasted, while Gretel stood next to the window panes and was nibbling at them. Then a gentle voice called out from inside, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who's nibbling at my house?" The children answered, "The wind, the wind, the heavenly child." Why would they answer? They continued to eat without being distracted. Hansel, who very much liked the taste of the roof, tore down another large piece. Gretel poked out an entire round window pane. Suddenly, the door opened, and a woman as old as the hills, leaning on a crutch, came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they dropped what they were doing and what they were holding in their hands. But the old woman shook her head and said, "Oh, you dear children, who brought you here? Just come in and stay with me. No harm will come to you." She took them by the hand and led them into her house. Then she served them with a good meal, milk and pancakes with sugar, apples and nuts. Afterward, she made 2 nice beds for them, decked in white. Hansel and Gretel went to bed, thinking they were in heaven, but the old woman had only pretended to be pretty. She was a wicked witch who was lying in wait there for children. She had built her house of bread only in order to lure them, and if she captured one, she would kill him, cook him, and eat him. And for her, that day was to celebrate. Witches have red eyes and cannot see very far, but they have a sense of smell like animals and know when humans are approaching. When Hansel and Gretel came near to her, she laughed wickedly and spoke. "Now I have them. They will not get away from me again." Early the next morning, they awoke. She got up, went to their beds, and looked at 2 of them, lying there so peacefully, with their full red cheeks. They will be good. They will be a good mouthful, she mumbled to herself. Then she grabbed Hansel with her withered hand and carried him to a little stall where she locked him behind a cage door. Cry as he might, but there was no help for him. Then she shook Gretel and cried, "Get up, lazy bones. Fetch water and cook something for your good brother. He is locked outside in the stall and is to be fattened up. When he is fat, I'm going to eat him." Gretel began to cry, but it was all for nothing. She had to do what the witch demanded. Now Hansel was given the best things to eat every day, but Gretel received nothing but crayfish shells. Ugh, ew. Every morning, the old woman crept outside to the stall and shouted, "Hansel, stick your finger out so I can feel if you're fat yet." That is a weird way of telling. But Hansel stuck out a little bone, and the woman, who had bad eyes, could not see the bone and thought it was Hansel's finger. And she wondered why he didn't get fat. When 4 weeks had passed and Hansel was still thin, impatience overcame her, and she would wait no longer. "Hey, Gretel," she shouted to the girl, "hurry up and fetch some water. Whether Hansel is fat or thin, tomorrow I'm going to slaughter him and boil him." Oh, how the poor little sister sobbed as she was forced to carry the water, and how tears streamed down her cheeks. "Dear God, please help us," she cried. "If only the wild animals had devoured us in the woods, we would have died together." Save your slobbering," said the old woman. "It doesn't help you at all." The next morning, Gretel had to get up early, hang the kettle with the water, and make a fire. "First, we are going to bake," said the old woman. "I have already made a fire in the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel outside to the oven, from which fiery flames were leaping. "Climb in," said the witch, "and see if it is hot enough to put the bread in yet." And when Gretel was inside, she intended to close the oven and bake her an eater as well. But Gretel saw what she had in mind. So she said, "I do not know how to do that. How can I get inside?" "Stupid goose," said the woman. "The opening is big enough. See, I myself could get in." And she crawled up, stuck her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a shove, causing her to fall in, and she closed the iron door and secured it with a bar. The old woman began to howl frightfully, but Gretel ran away, and the goodless witch burned up miserably. Gretel ran straight to Hansel, unlocked his stall, and cried, "Hansel, we are saved. The old witch is dead." And Hansel jumped out like a bird from its cage when someone opens its door. How happy they were! They threw their arms around each other, jumped with joy, and kissed one another. Aren't they siblings? Ew. Because they now had nothing to fear. They went into the witch's house. In every corner were chests of pearls, precious stones. "These are better than pebbles," said Hansel, filling his pockets. Gretel said, "I will take some home as well." And she filled her apron full. "But now we must leave," said Hansel, "and get out of these witch woods." After a few hours of walking, they arrived at a large body of water. "We cannot get across," said Hansel. "I cannot see a walkway or a bridge." "There are no boats here," answered Gretel. "But there is a white duck swimming. If I ask it, it will help us across." Then she called out, "Duckling, duckling, here stand Gretel and Hansel. Neither a walkway or a bridge. Take us onto your white back." I don't think a duck could carry that much, but that's okay. The duckling came up to them, and Hansel climbed onto it, then asked his little sister to sit down next to him. "No," answered Gretel, "that would be too heavy for the duckling. It should take us across one at a time." That is what the good animal did. And when they were safely on the other side and had walked on a little while, the woods grew more and more familiar to them, and finally they saw their father's house. In the distance, they began to run and rushed inside and threw their arms around their father's neck. The man had not had even one happy hour since he had left the children in the woods. However, the woman had died. Gretel shook out her apron, scattering the pearls and precious stones around the room. And now all their cares were at an end, and they lived happily together. And that was the story of Hansel and Gretel. I hope you enjoyed hearing this story. Just to let you know, I post every week, 2 books a week. And it's not completely fully set, but that's what I'm planning to do. But anyway, that was Hansel and Gretel. Goodbye, my lovelies.